At She Can, we tell women's stories. We show how women got to where they are today. So we interview women from all walks of life and all over the world so we can hear their stories because it's easier to be what you can see. And I'm really excited to talk to Ishtar Lakhani today. Ishtar, welcome to She Can. You are a South African advocacy specialist, campaign strategist, creative activism trainer, and facilitator. You are described as an activist working to create the world of our dreams. That's a really beautiful and big thing. You're a feminist activist focusing on issues of social justice, in particular rights of sex workers, and you're a part of the BBC 100 Most Important Women's list, which is really an incredible thing to achieve. Tell us more about yourself.
I mean, what is there to tell? I mean, all those things. When you hear it back told about yourself, it all sounds very strange and it sounds like someone else. But yes, I'm born and raised in South Africa. I'm currently based in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a long history in and out of different forms of activism. Growing up in apartheid South Africa, activism kind of ends up being in your blood
Yeah.
because from a young age you know that there is inequality in the world, and you know that this is wrong and you want to do something about it. But I reckon my life is a journey of finding what I can do and what I can be purposeful in, and what I enjoy. So as a result, um, yeah, I tend to change careers every couple of years, every 5 years, much to the dismay of my mother, sometimes. Because I don't think anyone can actually describe what I do. And sometimes I can't even describe what I do. But it is really just about trying to create a more just world.
Yeah, Ishtar, and yes, I would love for you to explain what you do a little bit more in detail and also maybe some pivotal points along the journey. You are obviously fairly secure in your activism life because it's not a job, right? It's really your
Mm.
lifestyle and it's your purpose and it pervades through all the areas of your life, I'm sure. But tell us a bit more about what you do right now and a little bit the points of how you got to where you are right now.
I might do it the opposite way around. And because I think describing how I got here kind of does a little bit to describe where I'm at currently.
Perfect.
And so I think I grew up with parents who were in the arts, into activism. My father was a journalist, my mother, art historian, studied fine art. And so I was always grew up always surrounded by arts and by activism. And then I went to university. And of course, I got kind of politically educated at university around feminist theory. Um, and I discovered kind of other activists that I really admired at university. And so that's where my introduction into kind of the formal activist movement began, specifically around women's rights, and the rights of survivors of sexual violence.
Mm.
And then I left university and I studied development and the anthropology of development. And of course, I was just so disillusioned with how development was being done. And
Yeah.
then I did a fellowship in India, and I was like, oh, okay, so this can be done in an ethical kind of decolonial way. Okay, there's some hope. And then I got back to South Africa, and I was kind of like, okay, I'm in my early 20s. I've studied some. I do gender and empowerment and women's rights. Like, what now? Um, and so I decided to work as the national coordinator of the One in Nine campaign, which was an incredibly enriching experience. I got to work with feminists that I had admired forever, and do amazing creative activism work. It was a campaign that really encouraged us to be creative and different and kind of make trouble, which I really found my calling in. I realized I was actually a really good troublemaker. I was really good at kind of agitating power. Um, but then as with I think everyone in kind of an activist lifestyle, I started burning out. And I was working long hours. It was exhausting work. It was really heavy work. Um, and so then I was like, I still want to do activism, but I don't think I can do this working at an NGO. Let me try open a coffee shop and sandwiches because I like sandwiches and they make me happy and I like reading. So maybe let me sell some books and I like music. So maybe people can come and play music. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. I'd never run a business before in my life. But I thought maybe if I can bring together all the things I really love,
Mm,
like this could be cool. And it was, and it was an amazing kind of stage in my life where I was just bringing community together. And that seemed like a departure from my serious activism work, but actually I realized I was doing that work of creating the world I wanted to see. I was like, oh, wouldn't this be lovely if we had a world that we could hang out and drink coffee and eat food and listen to good music and talk about politics and kind of change the world. So that was wonderful. And then most recently, working with the rights of sex workers in South Africa, it was an opportunity I couldn't say no to because it was an organization I deeply, deeply respected and respect and admire. To really admire their work, and they had an opening, and it's just something I couldn't say no to. And again, it was an organization that really encouraged creativity and encouraged us um, thinking about inspiring, fun, using humor, but still being serious in getting kind of political reform and kind of changing the laws.
mm,
And that's why I had to tell that story to get to where I am now, whereas I'm actually working um, freelance. I work for myself, which is a scary thing. But my work is really around supporting other organizations, social movements around advocacy strategy, around creative activism. So thinking about what is it you really want to achieve in the world? What is the change you want to see? And what strategically are the different tools you have at your disposal to do that, whether it is media or comms or strategic litigation or lobbying. There's so many tools we have at our disposal to kind of shift power and take power. And so sometimes when you're really deep in it and you're in the trenches, it's very hard for you to take a step back and look at the big picture and say, okay, what would be a strategic use of our time and energy. And so that is a lot of my work, is working with organizations to take that step back, but also inject some kind of creativity and different ways of looking at the problem. In a nutshell, if that
yeah.
answers your question. I'm not sure that it does,
Does.
but
It
I
does
try.
100%. I think you've done extremely well in getting a really nice circle of how you started, where you've gone, and where you are now. And it's very visible for the outside that you've used everything, you've been working up with everything that you've done to this point where you're really able to consult organizations or people on how they can best use their time and resources to really bring about change. Ishtar, so tell us a little bit about the two sides of the coins, your ups and downs in your daily life and work. What are the pitfalls and challenges that you have, and what are the wins that, and how do you celebrate them?
I mean, it's always difficult being a consultant because sometimes you feel like you're not making. That's always, I think, for me, the difficulty with kind of not working within an organization or an institution. Is like, how do I see that impact? So that's always been a struggle for me. But I find that for me, one of the things that has really helped with that is the forming of relationships. So a lot of the work I do and a lot of the organizations I work with long time. I partner with them. My role is not I just come in, I make a nice shiny report for your donors, and I leave. Like that's not the work that I want to do. So I'm very clear and communicative with people that I work with to say, like, this is the partnership. I'm invested in the work. I'm invested in kind of the success of a campaign, for example, that I help work on. So I guess that the relationship building part of it and the being selective of kind of the organizations and movements I work with and maintaining those relationships, I think have really helped kind of mitigate my insecurity around kind of what is the impact of my work
Mm,
and my successes. I mean, that's the thing. The great thing about this work is you're playing a supportive role, really. It's not your successes. Um, it's the people who are in the work successes. It's kind of a community success.
yeah.
But there is really something special, especially with regards to facilitation and facilitating creative activism trainings, with bringing together groups of activists who are really struggling with something, and like they've been doing things in the same way over and over again, and it's not working, but they don't know how to get themselves out of that rut,
Mm,
to kind of like do a creative brainstorming with them and see them come up with like really different ideas and really kind of interesting ways of viewing their problems and feeling inspired again to do the work. For me, that's always a win, because it is very serious work. It is heavy work. We're dealing with people's lives every day, and we're dealing with life and death situations every day. So it's sometimes hard to find kind of the joy, the creativity, the humor in this work. And when you do find it, I think that is really special, because that's what keeps the energy of people wanting to carry on doing this work for decades and decades. And that's unfortunately the work in human rights. That's the kind of work we need. It's work where we might not necessarily see the win in our lifetime. We're doing this for future generations. So to see that inspiration come back into people's kind of faces and attitudes and hearts in a session, that I think for me is the best thing about my work.
yeah, amazing. Ishtar, so what you've been alluding to it, what do you feel are your top qualities that really serve you with the life and work you do?
Definitely, I think some may argue against, but I think sense of humor. People think we do very serious work, but we can also be seriously funny.
Yeah.
For me, like just having fun in the work that I do and with the people that I work with, for me is really, really important. Um, and not to make light of what we're working with, but I find like when we lose that joy and when we lose that like desire to hang out and have fun and laugh, we close ourselves off to many different opportunities to change the world. When we are like super pessimistic and we don't think that anything's going to change and what is the point, that's when we keep on doing the same thing,
Mm,
and hoping it will work, when actually the space you need to create innovation is really, it comes from a joyful space, it comes from a fun space. I think definitely my sense of humor is something I think that has um, been very good to me over the years in doing this work. It's so easy to lose it and lose it forever. So keeping hold of that optimism, that joy, that sense of humor, I think is great. um, and I think I'm very persistent. I'm very persistent, and I I like to be thorough, and I like to convince people that actually we need to do things differently. And sometimes it comes across as a little bit aggressive. Sometimes when I'm like, no, let's try something different. Why are you doing that again? Why are we marching to Parliament to hand over a memorandum of demands again? When was the last time marching to Parliament and handed over a memorandum of demands worked? Can
as
we
work.
try something different?
Mhm.
So can sometimes come across as like frustration, but actually it's persistent. I am like a dog with a bone when I find something that I really deeply want to challenge and change, and that is, I think, been, yeah, my humor, my persistence, if I was to be asked.
Yeah, and I think you're creative, and that's the same as with humor, right? That's where the good
Mhm.
things are born from.
Yeah.
Ishtar, what top tips would you have to people who really need to change things? They want to create that world of their dreams. What tips would you give them? Where do you start?
I mean, my first tip would be was what you said: create the world of your dreams, create it, even in small ways. I think as activists, we're so good at saying what we are against. We are terrible at saying what we're for. So
Mm.
we know what we want, we know what must go. We know what we don't like. But then what does the alternative look like? Because I think if we can describe to people and show people the world we want, so that's I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we need to start creating these worlds in small ways. Like my attempt to run kind of like a sandwich coffee shop live music venue, that was part of it for me. Like I wanted to say, hey, what happens if I put my lounge suite on a main road in Johannesburg and like see what happens? And I think too often we're too scared to create these new worlds,
Yeah.
or we don't have faith in ourselves, or we think it's silly,
Mm.
or we think what's the point. So I think my top tip would be to actually start building the worlds we want to see in different ways. Like if we don't like how, I don't know, how, I mean, let's use the patriarchy, for example. Like, what can we do in our immediate vicinity? What can we do with the relationships that we have? How can we create? I'm a recent parent, and so I'm thinking in other ways of, okay, now how do I create little worlds that I want to see? That I want to see what parenting could look like done differently.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think just trying. What did Yoda say? Do or do not. There is no try. So just, yeah, just do it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true. Ishtar, so what are your plans and goals for your future? You became a recent parent. Congratulations. That's bringing an
Thank you.
extra layer of complexity and beauty and every all the feelings in one. What are your next years looking like?
I don't know, and that's amazing. I think another thing I've learned that is I don't need a 5-year plan, 10-year plan necessarily. I was a planner as a young child and as an adolescent and even as a grown up. And I think what being a parent has taught me is that has actually taught me to let go of some of those plans,
Mm.
and that actually like be present. And so it's also taught me that impact can look very different, because I'm like, okay, I have a small child now. I must change the world. I must make the world a way better place for her. And now I've realized that actually, even just changing relationships around us, changing the ways our community works, our direct, like being involved directly in my community, all of these things are impactful. All of these things contribute to building a better world. So what my next few years look like, I have no idea. I do know that currently I'm really enjoying the work that I get to do. I'm very blessed. I get to work with incredible organizations doing amazing work, and it's not boring. And so I don't see me doing a career shift and deciding to be, I don't know, an accountant anytime soon. I will be doing I will be doing activism for the rest of my life. What shape or form that may take, who knows? And that's okay, as long as I keep on finding ways to kind of express my desire for and build a better world for myself and others around me. I don't know what that will look like.
Ishta, I'm so grateful for this conversation because you have a very inspiring story, but you also show us how much fun activism is and how
Yeah.
easy it can be because we all can make a difference and we can all create the worlds that we want to see, which I think is really important in this day and age where there's 76 or 79 elections around the world. Many parts of the world are looking very iffy, to say the least. And so I think this is a really refreshing and beautiful approach. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.